Hello, all. So, how are you? What we're going to do now is look at the first part of week 3, critical thinking. Where part 1 is critical thinking guidelines, and then after that, part 2 will be inductive and deductive reasoning. How do we learn? One of the ways we learn is through social learning, through imitation. So what we do is we look at other people and we see how they cope with the world, and then we have to do it as well, where we've seen it, where we've heard it. So in a way, what we do, we develop behaviors through observations. We imitate. However, is that enough? Well, some people will argue not. Some people may argue yes, but that you also we will see is somewhat questionable. One of the things that is not emphasized, but is generally in social learning, is the propagation of crucial human cognitive capacity for engaging analytical reasoning. So very often we are unreflective when we copy. We copy the bias of the people that we imitate. Let's look at the school of fish, right? They all follow. Now, there are some complex movements in there, by the way, and that requires a class by itself, but you see where we're going here. We follow the school. We follow the crowd. Social learning causes humans to copy what their peers put forth. But it very seldom questions. So, what do we need to do? First thing is to realize that it's dangerous to rely exclusively on others for knowledge. We are prone to develop dependencies, so we must be aware of that. Let us not fall for authority as the source of truth. One of the things that does when we simply follow the lead is that we suppress our rational faculties, and that is something that we cannot do if we want to really understand what happens to us, not just to others. So what we need to do is to develop our own personal critical thinking skills. Okay, so we know humans tend to be lazy. We want to save energy. So what's the to-do list? Nothing. So if somebody else can think for us, well, why not? Well, we know that other people are major sources of information, but second-hand fact is not necessarily the best fact. Are we absolutely sure that the fact is not simply hearsay? Are we sure that it's reliable? One of the things we know is that the further the information we receive is removed from our own personal experience, the less able we are to check it ourselves. Whispers, whispers, whispers. Therefore, the more caution we should exercise before accepting it as fact. So, where do we get our information from? Books, newspapers, radio, TV, Wikipedia, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, blogs. Don't you like this? If everybody in the world dropped out of school, we would have a much more intelligent society. How many of us would agree with this? Probably not too many. But those statements exist on the web, and we tend to use them. Can we use them? Yes, in a critical way, perhaps. But that is for a later discussion. Where do we get our information from? Wikipedia? Robbie Williams eats domestic pets in pubs for money. Okay. Wikipedia is not always that bad, by the way. Just look at a couple of other examples, right? And did Tony Blair really worship Hitler? Who knows? We can talk as well about some of the theories that people have. Fake news is one of the things that we need to keep in mind with all the new media. It was named Word of the Year by Macquarie Dictionary. Isn't that interesting? Fake news. Now, you may notice the reference to an article in The Guardian, and I definitely suggest that you have a look at that. So you've got the link. Please go and have a read. But a bit more about fake news, false stories, usually created to influence political views or as a joke. Some may even argue that political views could be a joke as well, by the way. False, often sensational. Information disseminated under the guise of news reporting. Actually, it is not news reporting, but it can definitely be sensational and it can definitely be false. So what then is reasoning in the digital age? Well, not really that much different from what it was before, but there are many voices flooding the digital landscape. It is more important than ever to apply critical thinking because of the flood of information that we receive. We must question the information that we receive. And not only because of the flood, but because of the speed at which the information is generated and the speed at which it is transmitted. Is there still some form of control over the veracity of the information that we receive? Trump's sweet tweets expose the essential problem with social media, argues Suzanne Moore. See, there are all sorts of very interesting reflections about this. So when Trump talked at his rally on Saturday night before Sweden, as mentioned in the article, you look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden, who would believe this? Much fun was on Twitter. Yes, but can we rely on the information that we read here? Right? So, in a way, what matters for Trump, though, is not what is true, but what is believable. But isn't that what we do as well when we read the article, at least part of the article, on that slide? Just read as well in terms of, how close is this? What is objective? What is subjective? And we'll come back to that. Former Swedish Prime Minister Carl Bildt wondered on Twitter what Trump had been smoking. Is that exactly what was said? But then, was it exactly what Trump was saying? And Trump, what was he saying? As it mentioned here, he got it from Fox News. Is that credible or not? Is that objective or not? Is it true or not? When we say, is it true or not, we talk about fallacies. Appeal to authority. Saying, oh, well, that person knows what they're talking about, so it must be true. Is it? It's one of those dangers when we call upon experts to have opinion, and then we follow it blindly without questioning. Agree with me? That well-known guy does. No, agree with me. I have proof. Two different ways of looking at facts and figures. Logical fallacies, there are quite a few, and we're not going to cover all of them in the lecture, but we definitely can cover many of them in the discussions and in the workshops. Examples. Strawman argument, which is the false exaggeration of the opponent. Gambler's fallacy. Winning streaks exist in random phenomena. This actually is a very interesting point because there are all sorts of ramifications in regards to the concept of mathematics, but we are not going to go in detail here. Slippery slope. a famous one that we all tend to use from time to time. That means we use something that we know is there, and then we make the worst case scenario in terms of consequences in order to argue against something generally. Ad hominem attack, oh, common in sport. Play the player, not the ball. Right? Here, what we're doing is we're making people believe that the person who says something is not trustworthy. We're not attacking the argument. We're attacking the person who brings forth the argument. More logical fallacies. We've got a couple of those in some links, and of course, we can talk about those. The fake news and critical thought. The problem of fake news isn't solved by hoping for a referee, rather because we are participants. See, the fact that we are citizens, that we are users, is critical. The answer to bad speech is not censorship. The answer to bad speech is more speech. We are going to have the right to speak in order to argue the points against fake news. That was one of the arguments by Edward Snowden. So let us now quickly have a look at critical reasoning. It can't necessarily take what my peers do and say at face value. These are the counts. Right? Trust everything I see in the media. We know we can't do that. Trust famous, powerful authority figures. We know that it is risky. So what are we going to do? Well, as you probably guess, we're going to do critical thinking, critical reasoning. I can use critical reasoning to evaluate evidence and arrive at statements that are closer to the truth than by simply believing what has been stated initially. Now, here is something that is going to be the end of part one, and I'm going to question this a bit. Critical reasoning can be separated into two main categories: inductive and deductive. But I already want to introduce another concept here, abductive. It's not as well known as inductive and deductive, but it sits somewhere in between inductive and deductive. And we'll cover that a bit more in part 2 or 3.